wonderful presentation. Before we begin, I would like everyone for the few housekeeping rules to ensure that the session runs smoothly. Please mute yourself during the session, and also they're going to be the Q&A session after end of the talk. Today, it's our pleasure to introduce our esteemed speaker to our session, Dr. Mariza Dima, reader in game design, and she is her specialization is about user experience, user interface design. She is focusing on creating a meaningful and engaging interaction, particularly the use of the mobile haptic technology. Her background is relied on a span between the academic and creative industries, and also she has applied her skill in interaction design, creative technology to various R&D projects. Today, she's going to share her insight about the mixed reality heritage performance, combining the immersive technology and the theater as a tools for decolonizing heritage sites. And the topic is promising to offer innovative perspective on how immersive technology can enhance to understand and interact in a heritage site. Thank you so much, Dr. Mariza Dima, to join us. Please join everyone. Please join me to welcome her to our thought leadership series today. I leave the session to you, my dear, and also we have permission to record the session. And everyone, if you need the access, you've got the access. However, is only sharing with those that are attended to the session and AI members. If you request, you need to CC Dr. Mariza and also I, Asres, or Nadine for the permission, if you are not part of this team or AI. Thank you very much. I'm going to mute myself, and Mariza, you can share your screen and introduce yourself in more detail.
Thank you so much, Pantea, and thank you to the AI group for this wonderful invitation. It's been a pleasure and an honor to be here. I am currently a reader in games design with a specialization in creative technology. My research has been in the field of human-computer interaction, and particularly in using immersive technologies from VR to mixed reality, which is the project I will talk about today. I've used games design as well in some of that, but this project today, it doesn't include that much of of games design, maybe a little bit of gamification, but the focus is on mixed reality and how it can be used as a tool for decolonization or repairing, the repairing process of heritage institutions. So I'm going to share quickly my slides, and I'll try to slideshow. Yeah, is that okay? Perfect. All right.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
So, effectively, just in a few words, what I will be talking about is the project is called Decolonising Heritage through Mixed Reality and Live Theatre. And through that, we came up with the concept of mixed reality heritage performance, and I will explain that in a bit. This is a project that was funded jointly by the Arts and Humanities Research Council in the UK and the National Endowment for the Humanities in the US, and it includes partners in both sides who worked collaboratively to develop two experiences. One took place in a site in the US and one in the UK. So I'll give you a little bit of my background of how I came up to this project. So usually when we visit historic sites, and that's something that I do quite a lot, we walk through the place, we looking and sensing the surroundings, and historic sites are actually already what we could call immersive spaces, without any technology. However, often the information, or traditionally the information that you can use as a visitor to connect to the place's history and the characters and the eras and everything that has happened in that place, is through mostly text in the form of labels or leaflets, or sometimes you can hire an audio guide, which is a little bit more immersive because you're walking through the site with a narrator. And of course, you've got the tour guides and sometimes some companion mobile applications that the sites provide. However, this is a little bit disconnected. These methods are disconnected with the way that we experientially traverse these places. It's about like bringing information to the visitors, which they can read and then they can see, but not in a way that this kind of couples between the experiential learning of the space and the history with what we're actually doing at the moment, which is walking through it. So several performative tools have been introduced over the last kind of decade, maybe more, such as like games, so interactive scavenger hunts, or dramatized walking tours. So it's not just a simple walking tour, but maybe the tour guide can wear a costume of the era, for example, and take the audience through a bit of a storytelling experience while walking through the space. Theatrical performances, which take place in the historic sites, and their goal is to show the history of the space in a more kind of entertaining, in a sense, way. You've got immersive storytelling, which is part of what we worked with, which is the theater play in the space, but also it's participatory. So the audience participates in the performance as they have a kind of a role, and they take a part in the events that are happening while the narrative unfolds. And you also have increasingly VR experiences, especially for bigger museums that can afford VR spaces, and also mobile AR applications, which have been by now quite well established. A lot of, especially museums that have resources, will have like a mobile AR app where you can take it with you during the tour, and then you can reveal extra information. So these tools allow visitors not only to witness the historical narratives, but also to physically and also socially, we're talking about the participatory theater, interact with the localized past. Now, within that field, and because I've been working a lot with immersive technologies, I was very much interested in exploring what we can do with mixed reality. And mixed reality is basically, well, it's a little bit of it's a strange term because it used to have a different, and I don't know how many of you know this, a different kind of concept back in the 1990s, which I think more and more people are using now. So mixed reality is the whole spectrum from the actual real world to the completely virtual world. But when Microsoft introduced the HoloLens, which is the device that you see on your left, it's a pair of glasses that can project holograms in front of you. So it's essentially as if you wear the device and you go in the space, you kind of see holograms in the space. But because they have very advanced physics, they can do occlusion, which is to hide the hologram, for example, behind a table. And they have a lot of sensors that can be used to get the physical data and some kind of design a response of the virtual system to your actions. This whole kind of physicality, or this hybrid physicality, was made Microsoft to name this as mixed reality. Or extended reality might be another term you've heard. So we'll use the term mixed reality to actually talk about head-mounted displays that are augmented reality enabled. So like these glasses, and this is the device that was used in this project. In the past, maybe since 2016, when this device was out, it has been used occasionally for artistic purposes as well, because this device has found a lot of success in manufacturing and in training. But it has been used also in for artistic purposes, and particularly in historic sites. So one example is the Zen Temple tour in Kyoto, and it was also part of my first, as they say, experiment with this device, Saturn House Stories, and I will show you a little bit more details about it a bit later. Which effectively, all of them, what they did is to create a walkthrough through the space, and at the same time you could see holograms, you could see animations, 3D models of humans or objects, which would add to the history of the places you've been learning. So in a way, add an experiential angle to the learning experience of walking through a historic site. So that was the first part, and then of the project, of like, let's say, the first aspect of the project. We'll go to the technology, which is the mixed reality, and then we have the immersive heritage performance that I touched upon a bit in the beginning. So the immersive heritage performance, and it's a term, incorporates narrative-led, effective, and playful techniques found in virtual and live immersive and participatory theater practice to engage audiences with history. So effectively is you're an audience, you're given a role. There is a lot of world building at the back. The play takes place in a historic site, but it might take place in a specific day of a specific era, which is in the past. So there is a lot of like a world building in terms of the setting and the characters and the story. And the stories depend on what the heritage site wants to show with this performance. So my collaborator, Dr. Holly Maples, in this project has done, for example, a lot of this immersive heritage performance she's a theater director and playwright, which have been about England's slavery past. And she has done these projects, these performances in different historic sites that are connected to the transatlantic slave trade, for example. We have also, of course, the sensorial experience and the fact that the audience can actually talk to the actors. It creates a more kind of intimate experience, and also active empathy, which is like revealing complex lives and experiences of historic characters. So you can like critically engage with the history, not just leave it as a passive, let's say, audience. So I did this project, the Saturn House Stories, which I will show you in a minute. Holly Maples was she was at the theater department at Brunel a couple of years ago, and we were discussing about what if we bring these things together, immersive heritage performance and mixed reality. And we started first doing a theoretical contextualization of how this could be, coming up with the term affectual dramaturgy, which is about engaging the audiences in the sensorial experience of the site, of the history and the story, and augmented not only with the physical actors and themselves in the space and the critical dialogues that can happen, but also augmented with virtual characters and smells, and using a multisensory experience, and see what this can give, how it can enrich more these complex historic realities of the site. So that was the first, let's say, step. We wrote a paper about it. And then we were lucky enough to get a grant, the one that I mentioned in the beginning, from the Arts and Humanities Research Council on the National Endowment of the Humanities, which was about the advancing digital scholarship in cultural institutions, to do this project. So we've got we assembled a big team. So in the UK, we partnered with English Heritage, which is one of the largest organizations for heritage in the UK. And in fact, we collaborated with the head of interpretation, Dr. Dominic Bouchard, who was also on the board. She was a co-investigator. And in the US, we collaborated with the State University of New York and Dr. Mary Caulfield, theater director, and Historic Deerfield, which is a small village about 2.5 hours west of Boston, and which was in the 1700s, the northern border of the British Empire. So within this, we assembled this team and we attempted to address the question of how digitally mediated immersive heritage performance can aid the heritage sites in their decolonizing process and endeavor to attract also new audiences while critically engaging the public. So this project was a bit, it had like a few deliverables. So the first one was, of course, to see how we can use this affectual dramaturgy and the fusion of mixed reality and live theater to enhance the learning experience of the site, but also how through, if we're looking in the meta level of this process, how we collaborated with what we learned in the process can be used by heritage professionals, theater professionals, and digital design professionals, which were the three main disciplines that were involved in this very interdisciplinary project. So the houses that we choose, the historic sites, was Ashley House in historic Deerfield. So that was one of the houses in historic Deerfield, and it was back at least in the 1700s, the most important one, because it was the house of the minister of the village. And then in the UK, we chose Marble Hill House in Richmond, London. It's one of the properties, English heritage properties, and it had just gone through a renovation process. So it was a great time to experiment with something new. So both houses were different, right? So the context of decolonizing the narratives of the houses was pretty much based on the transatlantic slave trade, and both houses had different ties to this. So in historic Deerfield was a village that at the time period where we set the experience, which was around 1749, it had 16 enslaved Africans in different houses. The life was based pretty much on the order of God, on hierarchy, where the enslaved Africans were at the very bottom. And one of the themes that we were exploring was how slavery was justified through the order of God and through religion. In fact, the Reverend Ashley, which is the minister Ashley, that's why it's called Ashley House, at the point in this century, was very close to the date that we picked. He had wrote a sermon about knowing your place that he preached to all the enslaved Africans in the village, because one had attempted to run away. He was caught a bit later, and this inspired him to write a sermon about knowing your place. So this was kind of the one very big it was one incident that set a little bit the time and the day where our play took place. And historic Deerfield, apart from having enslaved Africans, it was also very much at the center of the transatlantic slave trade, as Boston had a lot of rum distilleries with molasses being brought from the Caribbean, and it was part of the trade that was happening at the time. In a bit of contrast, Marble Hill didn't have enslaved Africans. So it was the first challenge for us to try and find out how we could find stories that connect the house to the transatlantic slave trade. The house was built by Henrietta Howard, who was a mistress of George II, with money that was made by a company called I'm forgetting the name of the company now, but it was money that was acquired through the transatlantic slave trade. There were a lot of items and objects in the house that were the direct product of exploited labor. For example, this grand mahogany staircase, which you can see on the right. There were also used imperial commodities were used, such as sugar, tea, of course, at the time. And there were some shells from the Caribbean that were used to decorate the grotto that was outside. We did not use this because we did not go outside at all. We stayed in the house, but we worked a lot with the other items, the mahogany, the tea, the sugar, yeah, and that were the items. So very much different between the two houses, and it was interesting for us to see the different levels that each house narrative brought out the enslaved, the slavery. So in terms of working with mixed reality, we understand, so now I introduced the term mixed reality before, but all of this research is within the umbrella term spatial computing. So whether it's like VR or AR, and particularly AR with mobile or with headsets like the HoloLens, what we are building cyber physical spaces. So spaces where once you enter with these glasses on, you're immediately entering a hybrid space where the physical and the virtual coexist. And the design goal is to create the interactions in this hybrid space as much natural as possible and as much magical as possible, right? So that is the goal, because when something that is virtual can enter and interplay with the physical in a way that feels seamless, then this is something that is a magical moment, because you cannot distinguish how this works, but you accept it as a part of the hybrid space reality. I'm going to show you just a video from Saturn House Stories, which was the first project that I did to see a little bit how the holograms work. So this is a joint video of of the person moving in space and what they see through the glasses. So I hope this works. Let's see. Can you hear the sound? Yeah, okay.
Secretary of State, I served King Henry VIII and then later King Edward VI.
Music, please.
In 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
When the Church Institute owned this place, it was a social club. It didn't matter what you did or what your background was.
Things have changed over the years, of course. But my house and its stories are still here.
Right. It's a very short, just so you get an idea of what you see through the glasses. And can I go to the next slide? No. There we go. So in the same way, so what we did, so in the Saturn House Stories, we didn't have live actors. We just had the person who was wearing the device going through the spaces. But in this one, we had live actors as well. And that's one of them there on your left. And this is one of the first scenes in Ashley House, where the visitors are greeted in the door by the servant, who's the enslaved African, and they're brought into the lobby, the parlor, where they meet the lady of the house and her friend. And this is a point where they look at the map, which shows them a little bit the transatlantic slave trade. So it's a bit. I'm not going to go through the story because it's a lot of information. They would meet the son of the enslaved person, and who is now older. So they met him outside the house, and he said, "I'm going to send you on a trip. back to 1749, and here I'm not going to leave you. So they would hear him in the glasses as a narrator coming in certain moments. But the actors were actually, so the actors had certain dialogues set. But what we did, and that's the first time this has happened in the world, is that we built a theatrical play that was about this, took place in this hybrid space. So while the script developed, at the same time, we were creating the interactions and the content for the holograms in a way that merges with what the actors do and say. Sometimes this could be adding information. Sometimes it could be juxtaposing what they say. So at each time, there was something happening in the glasses that was part of the play. Now, the way that the actors knew what was going on, and they could also control it, was through a network of Internet of Things sensors, which you can see up there. These were a network of sensors that would give a buzz to the actor when something that the audience would see in the glasses finished. And they could also, it has a touch screen, they would be able to start something. So in a way, this was it was incorporated into their acting, that they would have to control also the virtual content and the virtual timeline of things that were happening as they see fit throughout their acting. So in a sense, in a way that the acting and the virtual content interweaved in a very seamless way, and the virtual content and material was an actor itself. So we consider that the mixed reality devices and the virtual content was an actor in the performance. So we had multiple users, so 2 to 4 at each time. So usually we started with 2, we then added 3 because that was not an issue in terms of network. We had to synchronize all the simulations that were going through the timeline and set up a local private network, as well as a server to control all of these animations that were playing. And that could happen through like a laptop or a tablet. So here are a few pictures from the performance in the US, which is called Jane's Dream. I'm sorry, this is G with a J in the beginning. That's my mistake. So there are some from a professional camera without the content, and then there are some with the content there. And here is from Sancho's Journey, which is the one in London, and you can see some of the virtual and the real. So I'm going to show you a short video. So because this is the AI group, we did have a bit of an AI in this project. We particularly used AI to recreate a face from a painting, which is this one here in the bottom left, which is George II. And at some point, he comes to talk to the audience, and I'll play, hopefully, oh, let me show you this one first. Yeah. So, and I apologize because the sound is a little bit low.
It is by the Italian painter Antonio Brunius. Mr. Sancho, where should I hang this painting to show it off to its best advantage?
Forgive me, Lady Betty, but I would instruct you to return that painting to its owner, and not to soil Mrs. Howard's beautiful walls with such a...
But sir, see how happy they are. We're all danced together. I see nothing offensive in this painting.
Foolish lady. You think our dancing shows that we are happy? Well, listen to me and mark my words. My name is Wanika, and I was not asked my opinion when this painting was taken.
So you see also that the actors, after some of the performances, and also because the sound is fairly loud, you can kind of hear it outside, they were able to interact at some point with the holograms as well. It was not, it's part of their improvisation. So she knows, she doesn't see, you see, she doesn't have the glasses, but she doesn't see. So she just looks in empty space, basically. This is what the audience sees. But because after a lot of like performances and trainings, she understood when she comes in and says things. So she replied with what? I don't know if you heard it in the first one. So she kind of like gets into a dialogue that she created completely. And I'm gonna just show you the king here. Let's see. So that's the AI.
Goodness, the very creatures of nature wake me out of my reverie. Do not listen to the foolish chatterings of Sancho. Those who protest against the great speculation we have afoot do not have a head for business.
So that was so the image was recreated through AI from the painting, and then we asked an actor to record on the video the face, so we can get the facial expressions as well as his voice, and then applied it again through AI in the 3D model. Right, let's go back to that. Right, so let me see what done. Oh, okay, so this was a very complex project, both in terms of technical details, but also technical development, also of collaboration. So as part of what we are creating, we're creating these 3 toolkits, one for the theater, one for the design, and one for the heritage industry. And the one for design kind of offers a holistic view of how do you enter this collaboration, because heritage sites most of the times don't have the resources, but also the knowledge of the technical details needed, and in order to get into an interdisciplinary collaboration. At the same time, digital designers come from a completely different background, in theater professionals as well. So we needed first to find kind of a common vocabulary. So the toolkit is going to be published within, I think, 2 months, because now we're going towards the end of the project, and it will be public available for anyone who would like to have read. But as a small kind of summary, in the preparation stage, the most important thing is to set the vision, which is the content, context, and a concept. So first, for example, I want to create a decolonizing experience using mixed reality in Marble Hill House. So we give them some tools about how to shape this vision, and how everyone in the team is on the same page with what this vision is about. Then it's about assembling the team, and we're talking about the core team, the people that are important from its institution. Particularly when we work with like large heritage institutions, we have a lot of people that can be part of the core team, from the interpretation department, history, digital engagement, user experience, visitor experience, etc. And then finally is to identify a model of co-creation, because it's about co-creating a project, which involves a lot of like different items and methodologies and methods and angles and perspectives of seeing things. So having a lot of discussions at the beginning, before even the project begins. We started, officially the project started in April, and we started discussions already in January, when we had learned that we got the funding, in order to bring the team together, understand each other's disciplines, and find a common model that we can follow. After that, we did a lot of workshops on these both on the 3, let's say, disciplines, and focusing more about how we can find out what would be the story, what would be the main characters. So in there, we can talk about what's the mission statement of the organization. So what do they want to show? It could be, this was about decolonization, but it could be about something completely different. Depends on the agenda of the heritage institution. Then the common understandings of the vocabulary, and then going into the themes. So the themes of the specific period in historic Deerfield, we had a lot of themes that we wanted to check. For example, social, economical, the social dynamics, the economy, the religion. So there were a lot of themes that could touch upon. And then get as much information as possible, which is a lot of the work of the public historian, about the characters and the stories and the era. And there is a decision then, which depends a lot of the heritage side, of how fictional the story will be or how factual. And here also had 2 different angles in this project. The historic Deerfield was a very much factual based experience, whereas in Marble Hill, we had more artistic license to blend a little bit the time. So for example, we worked a lot with African mythology, and we had two characters meet in the house that they wouldn't necessarily have met at this house or even cross paths in that specific era. Then we brought in more people to consult, so experts. So we did a decolonizing workshop. We did focus groups with members of staff at English Heritage and volunteers that are the ones who are on the sites every day, either as guides or as staff that is there in each room as just as security. And there was a vast knowledge in these people. Much more than we find than actually reading the history from books. So we found a lot of more interesting bits that we could add to the story. And finally, we had a group of critical friends who were people of a Caribbean heritage, helping us with the projects. They would actually, they acted as consultants on the story and the object that we use and the characters, and making sure that whatever we did was not like in line with how these histories should be told. For example, we knew from the beginning that we did not want to go very hard with something that could cause like emotional trauma. It's a very traumatic history, the ones that we talk about. So it's about how we handle it with respect, because a lot of people would feel vulnerable in these through these experiences. And in fact, it was such because the evaluations were produced a lot of like interesting material, but also had a lot of people who came up to us and said, I didn't know that this was going on. I mean, a lot of people, for example, in the historic Deerfield, didn't know there was slavery in Boston. They thought that the slavery was down in the South. So there was a lot of interesting things that we found out through the evaluations. So critical friends were very important, and yeah, so and they were with us throughout the project. After we create the story and the interactions and how these two can blend together in a nice way, we have the master production document, and this is it's a bit blurred because it's so dense and detailed. We worked with the Miro boards, the tool, is a collaborative online tool that the designers will use quite a lot, and it had a lot of information and a lot of post-its about. It had the script as well. If you see this bit here, this is the script, and what the script tells us and how we can enhance this through the interaction design, through the virtual material and what the virtual material does or says. Iterative rapid prototyping was very important, and particularly prototyping in space. So this is a 3D. So we were in space in the first time. So we went and visited the historic Deerfield, which was a little bit more challenging because it was in the US. It was 2 hours and a half away from a major center, Boston. So we had like 2 times the opportunity to go there and test things in space. So this is the 3D scan of the whole ground floor where the experience took place, and then we put it on the Miro board, and we started working a lot with the choreography. So where the guests would be, where the actors would sit, what are the places where we cannot go, which is part of a lot of historic sites have, etc. As the more you can go into the space, the better it is. In London, we had the opportunity to go on rapid prototyping space quite a lot. Then we have the production where the technology comes in. So the MR devices of course, don't come with trivial development. There's a lot of things to solve in terms of optics, in terms of the timeline, the synchronization between the animations and the trigger. So we had built this IoT network that would work with the game engine to produce the content. So there was a lot of network issues to solve. It might not fit everyone. So these devices, of course, they're not developed with with a lot of groups in mind. So we had to find occasionally, ways to fit it to people. Works fine though for monocular users, so that was a good thing, and people with glasses. Then there was the complexity of the IoT system and the timeline. So here there was a technical infrastructure that included real-time 3D production, the content production, of course, the assets and the animations, the spatial interaction pipelines, networking and the synchronization systems, and the real-time performance control. And throughout these, we kept a user-centered evaluation and a user system integration. So, for example, you can build like very robust networks, and then you put the headset, for example, on the audience, and you do a test with an actor. So how do the actors respond to whatever is happening? How do you train them? So always the actors were part, and some audience test we did was part of our iterative prototyping, iterative development, and quality assurance. And the IoT network, of course, its reliability depends on many factors. One of the challenges we had in Marble Hill House was that the walls were very dense, and there were a lot of rooms. The one room to, well, let me say that in this way: the rooms further apart to each other were a lot apart for the router that we had. So we had to buy a very, very strong router. We had to leave some doors open so that the signal goes uninterrupted. Otherwise, we had issues. So animations wouldn't play, for example. And then, again, as part of the production, is about the environmental design. So lighting design, costumes, props, not only from the perspective of theater, but all of this could be like, let's say, passive, but also could be active. So we had a prop could, by picking up something could happen on the virtual world, or the costumes could be enabled with wearable devices. We didn't have that in this project, but it could be something, for the future. And the lights are important because they define the mood. So we had fireplaces. So in the fireplace, originally, we had put LEDs that created a really nice atmosphere, flickering LEDs. And we had created also virtual fire to be on top. But it was very difficult to put the fire in a way that in a place that doesn't get in a way, because the way that these devices work is that you think you see a hologram. So you think you're seeing a holographic fire in the fireplace, but basically this holographic fire is rendered in your glasses, which means that if someone passes in front of you, this fire is going to be in front of them. So we had to work a lot with the choreography. And then after the first test, we thought it doesn't work anymore. So we switched to using just theater techniques for light design, which worked very well, actually, to set the mood. But the virtual lighting was a little bit more difficult. And then, of course, we have the casting and the technical rehearsals, which is a very important part, is how to train the actors to work with the on-body sensors, and also with when to trigger things and to understand when something has finished so they can come in a way that's very smooth. So finally, yes, this is just last slide, because this is something that we're developing now. It's going to be, as I said, out in about 2 months. We have these 3 different toolkits that can help organizations build these kind of experiences in the future. And hopefully it is a very timely tool as we're moving into the metaverse. We're all working towards creating this so-called metaverse. So hopefully the insights and the knowledge we gain from this project can help organizations like heritage organizations, theater teams, theater groups, and digital designers to work together to create even more incredible, like, experiential learning experiences. I'm on time, very funnily, so I never am. So I think I'm going to leave it here and take questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It was an amazing session, and also we learned a lot about your journey. Is there any question from our participants?
Thank you so much for the brilliant talk with all these movies that illustrate quite well how did you create all this nice work. So you have been using HoloLens for a while, and I do not have experience with using HoloLens. I've been using Oculus and Vive XR, which allow pass-through rather than see-through. So I think these kind of experience, because also a pass-through has some sort of distortion into them. So far, how do you see your experience using pass-through, see-through device? And what do you think in the HoloLens exists now that is not in any other device?
Well, I think pass-through and see-through have their own advantages and disadvantages. There are there are things that you can do easily with see-through that you cannot do with pass-through, and vice versa. So, and the most important, I think, is for me that with see-through, you don't need to recreate the realism of the physical environment, where the dimensions and distances are as you see them through your eyes. Whereas in pass-through, you are watching a video of recreated, and then no device so far. I don't know about MetaQuest 3. I'm still waiting the results, but they haven't been able to recreate the actual dimensions. You know, like if you throw something, or if you want to leave something on a table, it might not be successful on a pass-through. Whereas in a see-through, because you rely on your eyes, you know exactly where the table is. On the other hand, things like occlusion are super easy in pass-through because it's all virtual, whereas in see-through it's extremely difficult and complex to do, like the thing with the fire that I said. So you're always have issues of people getting into the middle of things, and it's you need a lot of processing power, so it's a lot of things to consider in that aspect. So there's the pros and cons. So it depends, I think, on what type of experience you want to create, I would say. To me, see-through feels more real. I mean, I prefer to work with see-through and work creatively in the design of it to overcome the limitations that it has, rather than see things through video. I'm not sure about, as I said, MetaQuest 3, but so far MetaQuest 2, I'm disoriented after a while. I cannot really work for hours, I cannot wear this device for hours, which is not something that happens with HoloLens, for example.
We have a couple more questions. Let's start with Shidam first.
Sorry, it takes a bit of time to unmute myself and turn on the camera. Thank you very much for this talk, very inspiring talk. As a person who works on networks and Internet of Things, I was definitely intrigued by that piece as well. My question is going to be a little bit more trying to understand how you dealt with the lack of reliability in the network, and how did you, deal with the errors, whether it was programmed into your system, if, the network fluctuates or the sensors don't work, do this instead, or you took a different approach. I'm curious to learn about that.
So the technical development in the US was by a company, Gnosis VR, and here in the UK by my colleague Damon, who is over in design school. So I think I will transfer as much as I know, because I was involved, but maybe I'm not transferring things well. So in the system in the US experience worked a little bit different than the UK one. In the UK one, we had a timeline that was controlled through a small app if needed. So the problem that we had was just the network signal. So that was solved by having one door open and getting a router with 6 antennas, basically. So this solved the problem. The one in the US was using Maximus P. It was a bit of like, the idea was that the game engine would be used only to render things, and everything will go through Maximus P for all the rest of the network. So there we had occasionally some packages like TCP UDP packages lost, but then I think we implemented a bit of what you said, like that if this thing happens, then go to next or do something so that it doesn't so you don't lose the package, and then that solves the problem.
Thank you very much. It's very interesting to see how the program kind of degrades gracefully, right? With whatever available resources are, and it's always tricky to find the right balance. So thank you very much for sharing that. And you did transfer very well.
Well, okay. I'm glad. Thank you.
Yeah.
Edward, you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. Can I just ask questions? I noticed that you are using the optical see-through HMD head-mounted display. What about the is your what you call your virtual object or your AR or your 3D virtual object? Is it a 3D thing or just 2D? And how do you recognize the what you call a special object on the background before you actually what you call protruding out, making the virtual object? Is that and then also what is your what is your what you call, how wide is your field of view? That means how many people wearing the head-mounted display can actually see the virtual object? Is it 360 degree all around, or is just a certain angle? Like for example, 90 degree, 120, or just 180 degree? Yes.
No, it's much less than that. So the HoloLens has a very small field of view, so everything is rendered in a window, kind of. I think is 30 something degrees. I might be lying, but it's not really big. So that's why if you're very close to a very big statue that's a hologram, you'll only be able to see what's rendered in that field, right? So you have to move your head up and down. But we solve this through positioning the people in certain angles and having small objects like at the time. These are 3D models, the 3D models that are rendered in the glasses. Did you ask about occlusion? Sorry, was it?
I asked about the if there are a number of people wearing the optical see-through glasses, and then at different point of view, I mean at different angle, you are saying that there's only the field of view is only 30 degrees. Let's say if I have three person standing at about 10 degree separation each, so at their point of view, will they still see the 3D?
It's from your point of view,
just like in real.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you had the option.
And then what about if
sorry.
What about if they are walking around, or if they are moving their head at the what do you call at the speed? Let's say like what they say, moving the head up and down and moving the head left to right. Would that synchronize properly? I mean,
the model it's anchored in a specific point in the space, and when you move around it, it doesn't move with you. You're just going around it and see it as it is. And the same thing, if you are 2 or 3 people, you're going to be seeing the same object, but if you are in 10 degrees angle, you're going to see it from these different angles.
Sure. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, that means you have sorted all the registration problems. These are also called the registration issues, isn't it?
Registration error. Yeah, I think I know what you mean. I think it has been addressed in the HoloLens. So I think there is a small drift, but it's not significant. I didn't try it myself, but based on my reading.
Yeah. So with the HoloLens, what you can do, which basically we kind of added manually all the objects, but you can do anchor positioning through the cloud, and then it's exactly where you want it to be, because the whole thing, because we had the 3D scan, we put it on the game engine, and then we knew exactly where each thing would be. And if you send this information to the cloud, then you've got it in the actual space anchored. So they always appear where, you know. We didn't do that for several reasons of performance, and we had to manually put the objects in space, which occasionally would cause a small drift, but that's about it. The proper way to go is to use anchors, cloud anchors.
Oh, sure.
Excellent.
All right,
Thank you
sure.
so
Thank you very
much.
Thanks for your.
Thank you so much. Very insightful talk. Thank you so much. I want to apologize for what happened. So obviously seems to there was 2 links of Teams, and there are some people were somewhere else while we were running this talk. So I try to get people here as much as I can, but I don't know what caused this. So apologies everyone, whoever missed the beginning of the talk. I will send the link of the recording. And for people who did not manage to catch up with us, I will send also the recording. And Marcia, if we can also share the presentation, if that's possible. If it's not possible, that's fine.
No, that's okay. I can send it over. I can send my slides over. Yes, yeah.
Thank you so much for your time again, and I wish you a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you very much
Thank
for the
you,
invitation,
everyone.
and thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.